You're listening to the To Write Love on Our Arms podcast, a show about mental health and the things that make us human. For the last 5 years, we've celebrated May being Mental Health Month through a campaign known as Black and White, where we highlight a handful of statements that we believe to be non-negotiable. Statements that we've declared to be truthful for you and for us. This year, we're shining the spotlight once again on 3 phrases from previous campaigns that deserve to be revisited in a new and updated manner. Those statements are, it's okay to ask for help, hope is defiant, and we need you here. That last one is going to play a more pertinent role in today's episode as we dive into the topic of rest. Rest in the form of actual sleep, rest from our jobs, from school, from social interactions, and rest even from the work that our healing and recovery requires of us. In a heavily digitized world, we're often expected and asked to be engaged, or at least available at all times. But as human beings who get tired and drained, being always on and always accessible is an expectation that we can't and shouldn't meet. It's honestly something that we need to protect ourselves from if we want to lead healthy and balanced lives. And because To Write Love aims to inspire and lead by example, this episode also marks a mid-season break for the podcast so that Becky, our editor and producer, can go on a month-long sabbatical. When we say that we need you here, we also mean to say that we need you to take care of yourself so that you can be here. We need you to advocate for your well-being, to prioritize things like rest so that you don't get burnt out to the point that being a story still going feels next to impossible. So to Becky, thank you for your service and thank you for your rest. We'll see you on the other side of some well-deserved space. And to y'all watching and listening, we'll be back in just a minute to answer some of your questions regarding and related to rest. So we're back now for the second part of this episode. Of course, we just went over our Mental Health Month conversations. We talked a little bit about the value of rest for our mental health. And we know and we recognize how easy it is to talk about something like rest, but it can be hard to actually carve out the time and space for intentional rest. So with those concerns and hurdles in mind, and with the assistance of our very own community care coordinator, Bianca Mujica, we're going to respond to some listener comments and questions in the hopes that you feel a bit more supported, in the hope that you feel a little bit less alone as you navigate the intersection of your inner world's needs and the requests of an outer world. So to start off, Bianca, thank you so much for taking the time to be back here with us. Bianca's going to be the voice of y'all, the voice of the public, as it were. We sent out a message to social media and to our community text line for your questions, asking what are some of your curiosities, what are some of the specifics of your life that you'd like to investigate as it turns to rest. So, Bianca, I guess we'll start with you and any wise words you have to open up, and then we can get to our first questions.
Oh, goodness, wise words. It's hard to think of something on the spot, but I think the first thing I would just tell people is that you deserve rest, regardless of where you're at in your journey, what you're struggling with, what you have on your to-do list. You deserve rest. You deserve to take time for yourself. You deserve to not feel like your worth is tied to your productivity, and just know that it's okay to just be and to not be doing something in every single moment.
Yeah, I'll take that as wisdom for sure. So yeah, let's kick it to our first question. What do you have first on the plate?
So our first question comes from Rain from Community. They asked, what happens to be your advice for college students who feel that college work is more important to get done than resting and taking time for themselves?
Oh, man. Rain, way to kick us off with a super easy question. I'd say that for many of us, we definitely, if we're pursuing higher education, we have this desire to impress our guardians, our parents, people that are helping us achieve this goal. We impress our peers, our classmates. There's kind of a sense of competition there. Impress our professors, the people teaching us. We want their approval. After all, we're picking their class in the hopes of making them proud and how they have taught us. But I think it's important to realize that in the midst of trying to impress other people, you've already done something incredibly impressive just by waking up, just by showing up, just by putting forth your best effort. The times that maybe you didn't get the exact grade, but you're still proud of your work, like that is enough. And there is this paradox that getting rest is actually super conducive to studying. They tell you not to cram for 24 hours straight because you hit a limit. Your brain hits a limit. Your body hits a limit. We've all kind of found ourselves at the point where we read the same sentence on a page over and over and over again just because we're too tired to absorb in that information. So I'd say it's important to take some time to interview yourself, maybe interview your peers, maybe even interview your professors, and just be honest about what is on your plate. But I'd say in terms of study and work, that rest is important because your body needs to reset. And in terms of expectation, that this is a period of life that, we're really just trying to do what we think is normal, that may or may not actually be a normal type of schedule of life and how to absorb information and how to relay that information. This question's already going really long. This is supposed to be a shorter podcast, but I do want to give an anecdote that there was a period of my college life where there was a class that it took a lot for me to go to in the midst of my own depression and in the midst of my own substance use and then in the midst of being an RA and trying to care for some crises that were happening with some of my residents, that I just didn't make it to class for like 3 weeks. And my professor reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'd love to have a meeting." And I go into that meeting ready to just be totally deferential and to beg for my academic life. And my professor just said, "Look, I don't want to talk about grades. I don't want to talk about work. I want to talk about you. Are you okay?" And that was an incredibly humanizing experience that I could be upfront with. I didn't divulge everything. I didn't, divulge the specific stories of the students under my care, but I told her that life was heavy and I just needed some time to work on a paper, and I needed some space to work on this exam. And I'm sorry for the amount of work that I'd missed. And we came to an agreement that that there was a way to catch up. But that would necessitate some honesty along the way. So again, I'm not going to pretend like my college experience is representative of everyone's, but I do know in that moment, having that sense of connection with that professor meant way more than getting the grade, meant way more than passing in the paper or acing the exam, which I was never going to do anyway. But yeah, the opportunity to have a conversation about my needs helped immensely, and probably in some level led me to where I am today at this organization.
Some tips from when I was in college and struggled with my mental health, things that really helped me were my school had a disability accommodation office. And I went and I just talked to them and was like, "Hey, I have depression and anxiety, and these are things that really affect my ability to function as a person. They have affected my ability to be a student. So I'm just trying to come here and see what I can do." And so they basically gave me a letter that I could give to my professors that talked about like the different accommodations that might help me. And so inevitably, when I got to a point in the semester where I struggled a lot, I could show them the letter and talk to them. And a lot of them, having seen that letter, would be like, "Oh, okay, this isn't just like you had you missed a couple assignments and you're trying to come and make it up. they they understood that this was something that was more serious, and ideally you wouldn't need a letter to take mental health seriously, but um, once I was able to talk to them about being registered with the disability office, they were usually a lot more understanding with helping me figure out a point going forward in my classes.
So, Rain, sorry for a long-winded answer, but I think a good question warrants some nuance in its response. Thank you, Rain.
Okay, so the next one comes from Jennifer, and they write, rest is the key to most everything. I totally agree with this. My issue is anxiety, trying really hard to lay down the things that I worry about. So I think the question here is just how do you move past or maybe just function as these really heavy, anxious thoughts are overtaking your mind?
Yeah, Jennifer, thank you so much for sharing. And I think you bring up a really important point in that we often identify rest as the opposite of work, that it's almost like a light switch. It's either on or it's off. You are either awake and working or you are asleep and rest. And I think the reality is that there's so much beauty in the dimmer switch of life. And in that dimmer switch is going to be the opportunity to practice rest, that we're not going to be professionals at this, especially not in this world that we are constantly connected to everyone and everything at all times. So I know, like my wife and I, as we're trying to incorporate a better sense of rest in our lives, she's done a really great job of intentionally just putting down the phone for a while to give her eyes a break before bed and to not worry about the next news item that comes up or the next meme on TikTok or what have you. Just a way not only just to give your eyes a rest from that blue light that's constantly flooding us, but also a rest of just kind of what all is the information bouncing around my skull, and do I need any more information right before I lay down? Some of this information can be anxiety inducing, and that's not even to speak of the anxiety that we live with without a reason connected directly to it. So don't beat yourself up if rest is difficult. Seeking rest can feel like work, but in time, with practice, we can slowly ramp down into these moments of rest. But Jennifer, we're there with you. We've done a couple episodes and certainly have made some resources on our social media about anxiety and anxious thought patterns. So to whatever degree you find these podcasts soothing, then feel free to find some of these on your journey towards rest as well.
I would also say to Jennifer that it's okay if your rest starts in increments. It's okay if you do like
Sure.
5 minutes of rest one day and work up to 10 minutes the next day, 20, 30, and then get up to maybe doing like an hour. If taking time to rest makes you more anxious, then focus on the things that you can do. So if that's just taking a really quick 5 minute break to meditate or do some breathing exercises or something. Like if that's what you're able to do in that moment, that is totally fine. The next question is from Chris, and it's more of a logistical concern, which is how do we get employers to buy into rest?
Yeah, I think, maybe one of the silver linings, we mentioned this in recent episodes and over the past year, but one of the silver linings of the pandemic was that it really brought mental health conversations to the forefront. We talked about it all during our WSPD campaign of last year, that it's no longer weird to ask, how are you doing? No, really, how are you doing? And I think at the same time, there was this sense of freedom that a lot of people felt as a lot of workplaces went remote of great, like I can do my job from home now, like with my dog and lunch breaks can be a bit more nebulous now. Like this sounds pretty cool, right? But I think along with that was this loss of structure, that maybe working from home didn't offer the rest that we thought it did. All of a sudden, my kitchen table is not just a place I find nourishment, but also the place that I'm responding to emails all the time. We have tools now that keep us more plugged in than ever. I remember growing up, my dad was fortunate enough to have a home office. And I remember the first fax machine he got. And I thought, that's wild that people across the country can talk to you using this and you can see their handwriting. Like, what an age to live in. Now, granted, I was like in second grade at the time, but now, like, we carry this with us at all times. If not a tablet, then a phone. We are constantly able to be accessed, and we have this idea, this consistent sense of urgency. And I think at some point, it takes a brave group of people just to throw their hands up and say, "Time out." We need to set better boundaries. We need to care for each other more, simply because that's how I experience care. If people give me a little bit more grace or a little bit more heads up, or if everything doesn't have to be right now, but until people kind of identify within their own workplaces that it's problematic, then things will continue on as scheduled, as planned. We're starting to see, and again, especially with this age of the pandemic that we've all experienced, more and more companies setting up these employee interest groups. They carry different names from different areas of geography, but I think to whatever degree you have a number of people on your staff that you've talked to about mental health concerns, about burnout culture, forming a little informal affinity group and just say, what are ways that we can start just caring for each other a bit better? And this is a way to develop what I've kind of dubbed as a micro culture, that if you don't feel equipped to change the entirety of the organization, the entirety of the business, we can change how we decide to interact with one another. So I wish I could pass you an employee bill of rights on how we can effectively change mental health culture in the workplace. But I think it has to happen in a way that's authentic to you and your relationships and your team. And this is all across the spectrum. This isn't just for for people at the leadership levels or at just the get it done levels, but this has to be consistent across all levels of an organization.
Yeah, I just like I said to Jennifer as well, like you could start with baby steps. You can start by maybe putting a pamphlet for resources on your company's bulletin board, or maybe sending an email to all of your coworkers with something. And if you feel like your employer won't be responsive to directly approaching them, then maybe doing something that kind of includes them and plants that seed in their mind could be a way to show them that like people are receptive and they want and they need this. So I would definitely encourage ways to, like Chad was saying, build that community with your coworkers in ways that can show your employer that this is something that would help the people working there.
Yeah, as a PS, I'd also say for any employer out there that gets a list of perks associated with your job, read through them. Be aware of what your rest policy is and take advantage of it. If you are given X amount of hours or days of paid time off, take those days. Those are yours, especially if they don't roll over.
And use your days off to actually rest. I am
Mhm.
guilty of using my days off to run all my errands and get all the things done that I need to get done. And it ends up being a day off from work, but not a day off from life. And I know that's so difficult to do when you have only a limited number of days off. But if you actually take the time to rest, even if it's just for one day, you are way more likely to feel motivated and rejuvenated to continue working the next couple of days and to get the things done outside of work that you need to get done. So take that time for yourself, even when it's hard, because you deserve it and you can't just keep running like a machine. So, next question in the same realm, Molly wants to know, how do you rest when you're the boss, or if you're a worker in a position in which the place wouldn't keep running without you there?
Hmm. Yeah, I'd like to kick this question to Becky. Be- Becky, Becky, you there? Oh, Becky is on sabbatical. So
Yay!
I say that playfully just to paint that it is important in all of our roles, but especially in leadership roles, to model the rest that you would like to see your employees take. So, Becky is such an important member of this team. She makes this podcast happen. She makes our blog happen. She is often kind of the central hub of so many of the words that go out to the masses. And we applaud Becky for taking the time off. Now, that is a piece of our corporate culture that we do enable moments of intentional rest and time away. And Molly, to your question about, what if you were the only person that does this job that won't get done without you? I'd say that one thing that we found as an organization as it relates to sabbatical as part of our culture is that this gives us as a team a chance to learn more about Becky's job, which gives us more compassion for her job when she comes back. But it's on us to help pick up the slack. We know that we can't just go without a blog and without a podcast and without speaking to the outside world, but we want Becky to keep doing the work she's doing. And that means giving Becky the time to step away for a bit. So again, like the gifts in that is not just a better Becky, but it's a better us. It's a better team. It's a better community that understands her world better, that understands her better, that understands what a value she is because she can be more efficient than we can, but man, what a joy to help carry our friend in a unique way through this as she's absorbing some well-deserved rest. So I'd say for those in leadership positions or those that are convinced that the job's not going to get done without you, with a little bit of planning ahead, because Becky did not just show up yesterday and say that she's taking sabbatical, but this is something that she said, I would like to do this. How can we make sure that we do this? And that the True Right Love ship stays afloat. So with time, we're able to schedule out what jobs need to be done. We can prioritize what who can take care of jobs X, Y, or Z. And so I'd say just having this dream of rest, much like with what you were saying earlier, Bianca, doing this incrementally, that we can plan for rest. It doesn't just have to be something that we do, but we can take some tiny steps in that direction before it is time to just shut down the computer for a little bit. Um, so model that rest. Take advantage of the rest. Invite people into this and celebrate it when it happens. Don't begrudge yourself or your team for having the opportunity to learn more about the task at hand, because we are convinced that when Becky comes back, she's going to be an inspiration for us to rest and to work and to plan around our own opportunities to work and rest in a balanced way.
Yeah. And something, thankfully, that I've never had to experience, but something that my partner has experienced at a lot of workplaces is that when you take time to rest or you establish boundaries, you're guilted for it by coworkers and superiors. And if that's something that you're experiencing and that's part of why you're not able to rest and that's part of why the place can't run without you, know that it's not your responsibility to ease the burdens of other people. If you're a worker and you taking time means that everybody else has to pick up your slack, that is management's problem. That means that they need to do their job better. And that's not on you to have to worry about everybody else because you're not the one in charge of running the place. And if you are management and you taking time to rest would affect everybody else, then think about maybe hiring more people to help ease your load, or maybe delegate some of your responsibilities to other people. You don't have to carry everything by yourself. That's why companies are not a one person show. So if the place won't run without you, then it might be a good time to think about establishing more boundaries, hiring more people, or promoting people, and easing some of that workload on yourself. Because if the place doesn't run without you, that sounds extremely stressful, and you shouldn't have to deal with that on a daily basis. The last question comes from Bree, who asks, how can we address the guilt that often comes from taking time for ourselves?
Hmm. Yeah, Bianca, you're just kind of hinting towards that, right?
Yeah,
About
unintentionally.
no, but it's unintentional, but that is part of the experience. That is part of the
Hmm.
tension. So Brie, I hope you hear in that you're not alone in feeling that guilt. That doesn't mean that guilt should be normalized. Just because it's a common feeling doesn't mean that it's the goal feeling of rest. Again, I think it's important just to be aware that not every year of human existence has looked like the 2000s and the 2010s and the 2020s, that we have more access to more information than our ancestors could have ever dreamt possible. I wonder if they felt the same amount of guilt for not getting something done. And even then, just defining what is that something and what is done. Is it responding to making sure my email count is down to zero? Is that really a marker of productivity? Maybe for some people, but maybe not so much for others. And in all that, like, can I give myself a little bit of grace and realize, what is the difference can I imagine what rest would feel like for the other party in this email thread? I don't love getting emails at 9 p.m. I wonder if the person on the other end wants an email from me at 9 p.m. Or can this wait? Or can dinner time just be dinner time and not a time to organize my next day? Can my coffee time just be my coffee time and not an excuse to hype myself up for the next meeting, for the next thing? Can I just take these moments as they come? So to limit a sense of guilt and quotes on that front, let's take the time to choose rest on our own terms so that rest isn't forced upon us. It's kind of math, right? Like you don't, your body is not built to work 24/7. So listen to your body, listen to your mind, listen to wise voices in your life that can point out when rest can be warranted, and perhaps even needed. Um, so, Bree, you're going to catch none of that guilt from our direction. And in fact, we're just going to invite you to join us as we plan some rest moving forward.
Yeah, I would also say that this question really speaks to me as a person of color, because in a lot of communities of color, especially, well, from my experience, the Hispanic community, rest is foreign. Rest is taboo, and it's even looked down upon in a lot of ways. Sometimes when you talk about experiencing things like anxiety or depression, it is chalked up to not having enough things to do. And it's responded with things like go wash the dishes, do the chores, keep your hands busy, be productive, get something done, and that will help you feel better. Because for a lot of older generations, it was all about what you could do. When you are already so marginalized, you're very limited in the things you can offer. And so taking time off meant you weren't going to be able to feed your family, or you weren't going to be able to send your kids to school. And so rest is not something that is talked about at all in communities of color, because it's not something that our parents or our grandparents knew how to do. And for people who are from the younger generations and get a lot of that message and are feeling burnt out by it, I see you and just want you to know that you don't have to carry that generational trauma with you. You don't have to hold on to the burden of having to work all the time to be able to feed your family. And if that's a situation that you're in, you still deserve rest. You still deserve to take time for yourself. And it can be extremely hard to do when there's things coming at you from all sides. But it's the world is different now, and the reasons that our parents and grandparents couldn't rest may not and don't have to be the reasons why we can't rest. So know that it's okay to rest. It's okay to take time for yourself. It's okay to not be hustling and not prove to the world that you're more than what they see you as. I know that a lot of times we hear the saying you have to work twice as hard to get half as far. And as true as that may be for a lot of us, and as heavy as that may feel, it it doesn't mean that you are never allowed to take a break. Hustle culture is can be very damaging to a lot of us, and know that you don't have to like live up to this standard to prove something, even to yourself. So yeah, to you, to the brown and black people out there that are listening, I empathize with you, and I hope that you're able to find that peace within yourself, because it's hard, but it's worth it.
Yeah, we have some people that we admire on the internet. They're called the Nap Ministry, and these are people who have made the culture of rest as something super invitational. They live it out. They are all about kind of redefining rest as a form of work, as a form of inner work. So definitely check them out, be encouraged by them, follow them. They kind of gave us, well, in a way, me a wake up call in that as we were trying to plan this episode, we're like, who are people that we should ask to be part of this podcast? And I'm like, yeah, that ministry. And it was about 3 weeks later that I saw a post on their Instagram page. I was like, why do people assume that we want to be guests on podcasts? We just want to rest. And I'm like, oh, geez, I walked right into that one. So I think to that end, just know that your desires for rest are certainly echoed amongst other people. And this is something that's becoming way more part of our vernacular, that rest is something to be valued, something to be pursued, and something to be enjoyed when the opportunity presents itself. Even when it doesn't present itself, something to stand on the desk and say rest is needed.